just send it really late. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Bye.
Hi, I'm excited for this one.
Bye.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
good. I kind of just joined early. Should I turn off my camera and everything until you're ready?
You
All right,
can.
thank you.
You can. I'm just doing some stuff to get us on YouTube. So
Or I'm good here.
okay, good. But good to see you.
You too. I've got a full physical, so I'll survive this.
Well, that's good to know.
Okay.
Okay.
Hopefully I won't pass out from all the blood they took from me.
Yeah. Well, yes, there is that. There is that. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna mute for a second.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And do a
Please.
couple things.
Sure. That's what I'm doing. Thank you. Okay, good. Hey,
Hi
hey,
there.
Alex, how are you? Good.
How
So
are you?
everyone's gathering for the storm. Perfect.
Yes, I've got a lot of flare on my glasses, haven't I? But there's not a lot I can do.
No, that's quite all right.
Oh, I love your blouse though.
How you doing?
I'm good. I love your blouse. So excellent.
Oh, thank you. I
Hi,
hadn't-
Cave.
Hello. Hi. Hi.
Hold on, I gotta get my double chin tucked in.
Oh yeah.
Did you see? Wait, who's in London there? Is that Cave? You're in London, yeah?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in London.
I just actually read today that they had to shut down Batman. Somebody tested positive.
Oh.
They
Oh.
were shooting for 5 days. They've been shooting for 5 days.
Oh my God.
Oh,
This is going to be the problem everywhere, you know?
My
Yeah.
friend is the production designer on that. Check in with him.
Yeah.
Ooh.
James Chinland.
Yeah, James. Yeah, he's an old friend of
Yeah,
mine.
I've
Him and his
worked with
wife.
him. I love
Yeah.
him. I
Yeah,
love
he's a lovely person.
Yeah, we did
We're from the same neighborhood, kind of. You know, I mean, not where we grew up, but you know, in our 20s, we were all kind
Yeah.
of
I did the
scumbags together.
Avengers with him in Albuquerque.
Yeah, he's an excellent human, and his wife Claire
I
is an
didn't meet her.
excellent. She's amazing artist. Yeah, she's really cool.
He had very cool gold earrings. I was very, I had earring envy.
Handsomest man in town.
Good
Yeah.
knitwear too, I remember. Yeah, they just shut down today. I think it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's-
Was it an actor then?
They didn't say. Nobody said, but it had to be someone in,
Somebody
know,
significant, it must have been. Yeah.
or that someone who's in contact with that, like, you know, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, zone 1A or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah.
Although on our commercial, we, you know, one person reported that they'd been in contact with someone, and everyone on the crew is given the anonymous content is giving everyone the, you know, permission to not want to come the next day to without judgment and to be replaced. So I think that they could also be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, they could be, but it was just kind of hit the wires that, you know, they were shutting down. So
Yeah.
just a day or two to figure it out. You know, we'll see.
Yeah.
Mm.
Where there's a lot of bad press of going around about sloppiness, you know.
Yeah, I've got
commercial.
friends who are working, and they one of them, it's additional photography, and she was really frustrated because she felt that they were being incredibly rigorous. And it is always at the extent of being able to kind of really do your job when you've got to distance. And she said other departments weren't, and she found it really, really frustrating. In that they were allowed on set to do checks, and yet, you know, one day she had to go on to take something, and she said there were hundreds of people around the camera.
No, it's not cool.
Like an idiot, you know.
Yeah.
No, it's not cool.
I mean,
That's why you have to have an outside force policing it, you know, and that person has to have permission.
But I think a lot of the trouble that people are having is that we do have COVID officers, but they don't understand.
No, they're not.
They don't understand how each department works, so they kind of can't have a rational voice in
No.
deliver.
The way we dealt with is we decided we needed to educate them, and we also needed to give every department permission to explain things that you know are just have always been private to their departments, you know. And that was a prep we did like well before we started, and I don't think people are, you know, and that's something that I think the director has to.
Yeah, on these huge productions.
Because if the director won't move on, then nothing can happen.
Yeah.
That's why I think the director really has a responsibility to like push it.
Enable, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's how I feel anyway.
I think you're right.
All right, so we're moments away. So what I'll do is I'll give us a countdown, as I said before, and then I'll hit the broadcast button. At that point, we'll be live, everywhere. And then, as I said, I'll give the introductions of you guys, and then I'll go through what we always do in terms of talking about the COVID and the social unrest, and then we will begin discussions. Okay, everybody?
Okay.
All right.
All right. Okay, so we are going to go live in 3, 2, 1. Okay, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another film roundtable session. This is lucky number 13 in our series. I can't believe it's been that many in that quick of a time. And as always, if any of you need to catch up on any of the back episodes, please always go to filmroundtable.org, and it's got all of our back episodes in the vault, so you can catch up on any of these discussions that you may have missed. Our guests today are the team behind the recent release this year of Emma. We have with us director Autumn de Wilde. There we go, there she is. Production designer Quinn. And costume designer Alexandra Byrne. How are you, everybody? I'm
Okay.
glad to have everybody here. Let's give a little virtual applause, because I know you can't see everybody out there that's watching today, and we like to get them to give us all back a little bit of love. So before we begin, as always, as everybody knows who follows us, these discussions all began because of the COVID lockdown and the possibility of all of our friends and contacts, filmmakers, who are all idled at the same time, to come forward and have these discussions. So as always, we like to share the numbers where we are now as this pandemic still moves forward. As of the launch of this episode, we have 865,000 worldwide deaths, and 190,000 of these are in the United States alone. So this is still progressing every day. And as everyone knows in our business, you know, as we slowly start to go back, this is something that we're keeping in mind. Also, the social protests and have not really, you know, that continue to happen in the streets of our major cities. So as always, we would like to honor all of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, as well as our First Nation brothers and sisters whose lives have been taken by the hands of police brutality and all other senseless acts of violence here in the United States and around the world as well. So please, everybody, just join me in a moment of silence in the virtual space. Thank you for that, everyone. That means a lot to, you know, a lot of the people that have been following us. It's something we always want to keep track of as we move forward. All right, so one of the things that we've been
I'm already
talking
crying.
about, yeah, it's an emotional thing, and it's you know, the amazing thing to me is to understand the numbers from when we started this to where we are. It's like, you know, it's one of those things, we just did it in the first episode and we continue to do it, and you just see how all of this progresses. But thank you, everyone. And today, one of the things we've discussed at different junctions in the film roundtable is the idea of teamwork and the idea of the creative team and how it's built. And you know, we firmly believe that filmmaking is a team game, and this is something that we always try, the new, young, aspiring filmmakers that come and listen to us, how important the creative team that the director puts together and the trust in that team is. You know, with that in mind, we had a brief conversation about this, Autumn, but very curious about, you know, your process in choosing your collaborators and being able to surround yourself as you did with Alexandra and Kave.
Well, I thank you, and I'm so excited to be here too, and to see those two faces, which I miss very much. But you know, because I started out as a rock photographer and really scrappy, like making my own backgrounds, cutting them out of paper, you know, borrowing clothes, putting my clothes on bands, you know. I think that like as I sort of scratched and clawed my way to the sort of bigger jobs and directing videos and the commercials and all of the struggle it took to sort of fight through that, I remembered how powerful it was when, for a lot of artists I shot were very sensitive, Elliott Smith and Beck and a lot of really powerful artists who, just couldn't handle kind of like the bullshit on set, which was pretty bad in the 90s, So I think that it became really important for the mental health of my subjects. I felt like a bodyguard, I think, and I think I tried to keep that as like the teams got bigger, and luckily I started breaking through, but I still felt like the chemistry of the team is an art. Building that team is an art form, I think, and it's as important as the ideas and the stars and and all that stuff. And and when you choose the right person, the right group of people that you feel will be able to communicate with each other, you have this flow. And I think you also prevent, ideally wasting a lot of money. And I think I was saying yesterday, because I for a long time, I'm 49 when I made Emma. So it took a long time to finally make a movie. And I think that, what I was saying yesterday is like, basically every time I got a kind of minuscule budget, I tried to make it look like it was double the budget, and so that then the next people could think I could handle, or that I had been given a bigger budget, and this was definitely a problem with like in rock photography. I don't remember there being very many female photographers at the time, and there were I know there were, but they were all struggling like I was, and I think I heard things like, oh, she can't handle like a high concept thing, and things like that they would tell bands to convince them not to use me, things like that. And so it became this big thing, but in that I was putting a pressure on my team, and because I was a PA also for a long time, I knew what it took when I asked for something. I also like understood that by asking my team to make it look like our budget was double what it was, that it was putting tremendous strain on them. And so that partnership and trust needed to be there. So, in meeting Kave and Alex, I was really, because I couldn't use my team from America that I'm very close with. This was a really important thing. Every crew member, I felt like it needed to be this like incredible dinner party, because I knew that I was going to be doing the same thing, trying to do a lot more than the budget would allow, which was a decent budget, a great budget for a first film. But and I think the other thing is that I have always, because of all of this, I have always worked with my team from the beginning in a cross pollination of information, because it's very spoiled, I think, to sort of ask for someone to bring a million choices without giving them any direction, and then bring half the other team to bring a million choices, and then to be dissatisfied that no one's reading your mind, and that those things don't go together. So I think that what we did is we did a extensive color researching and comparing and sharing between Kave's department and Alex's department, and then when Chris Blauvelt, the DP, came in, so that it doesn't matter if this is the perfect color, silk dress on Anya, if the production design isn't supporting that, and if the DP doesn't understand the colors that need to tell the story. So I guess I would, Kave and Alex are so thorough in and they're such masters at their craft that that by also giving them permission, I hope, to each other and me, problems and victories, then we advanced in a way that I think could only have happened towards the finish line, with that communication.
Well, that's and that brings me to my next question. Since you two were so intertwined in helping Autumn do this, I'd like to know from each of you, how do you go about in your process? So Alex, with you first, in terms of costume design, helping Autumn tell the story.
It's really about, obviously there's the script, but the script is just the script. It's what story Autumn wants to tell from the script. So there's a lot of, to begin with, it's words describing visuals, and then you need to begin to pin down those visuals so that you have a visual library that works between the two of you. So you're talking about the same thing, It could be that you meet a director and they're saying red and you slowly work out they're colorblind. That's a very banal example, but it can happen. So you have to work out what people mean by what they're saying. So I usually start by obviously meetings, conversations, and then I do big collage mood boards because they're, with the internet now, there's so much research you can do. You're inundated with research. So that I love the process where you've got a room, the floor covered with images, and you've actually got to distill them down and compose these mood boards. And they're usually about a character or a story point, and they're very eclectic. They're not to do with period, but something resonates with that moment. And what I enjoy about them is the process of composing them with juxtaposition, but also everybody, Autumn, Kave, the actors, everybody sees something different. So it's a very dynamic conversation. And from that, and usually I find it's the accidental, tangential conversation where you go, oh, I get it. So it's about a lot of talking, visuals, collaboration. And what I loved in meeting Autumn is that she's so passionate about color. And I'm also obsessed with color. Color is the biggest storytelling tool we have. So it was very exciting to be able to work in that way. And
we also were, and we I think, like, because not everyone understands how many thousands of shades of white there are, or how many thousands of shades of red, or how red is affected by the, it is nice. It was nice that, of course, you are an expert in color, and Cave's an expert in color, and so. And then I already understand that. And so I think that we were able to skip up the ladder in the conversation quicker. I know I'm giving myself a compliment, but I think it does help to understand that.
Because, Cave was providing colors as well. And I think through your love of color, we were able to be braver as well.
Yeah.
And you can only collaborate to be able to do that, or else you necessarily kind of pull back when you're slightly safe. I need to know what color the set is because I need to know whether a character is in sympathy with that room, in keeping with that room, or if they want to be out of favor with the room. And so there's a huge amount of work that can be done without any dialogue.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, as we've been trying to teach people and those who don't understand the process, obviously, Kave, for you, in terms of finding locations early on that help tell the story, how was that process on this movie?
It was a challenge because we needed to find a location that we could transform, with the bold colours that we just discussed. Because Emma's character in particular, that that day, their way of expressing their wealth was having the most beautiful colour painted or wallpaper in their room, or elaborate paneling with beautiful frescoes painted or whatever. So we need to find somewhere that wasn't constricted by being a museum status building, or in the UK we have the National Trust and English Heritage. So that, and also challenging to find a building that met, I'm talking about the main location, Hartfield, that hadn't been extensively used by other people on Jane Austen films.
Right.
So it was quite a challenge, and also the other thing, we needed to find a location where we weren't filming the outside of one house and the inside of another house, and there was like a flow between the inside and the out. So it had to tick many boxes.
And that was something that I wanted, because I wanted to have this sort of mousetrap, especially for Emma and her house. I wanted the actors to have this feeling of, like, that although she has this big house, this is really a gilded cage for her, and it did help. And that search was extensive.
And then so we had a fantastic location manager, Helene, who coincidentally, I was delighted to know that Autumn had asked her to join us, or roughly at the same time I knew she had joined us, because she's a very good friend and a very good location manager.
And that's
So,
that's that thing about chemistry, it's like, a lot of times I was picking people that turned out they loved each other, they knew each other, or they became close quickly, they became close, it feels like organizing a really intimate dinner party sometimes,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of time in the car, and a lot of driving, and I've it's been hard to find the location managers that I trust, because it's, they're really like, it's the beginning of the plotting of the storytelling, and
Yeah.
you want to, as much as Cave is able to build worlds from like matchsticks, we don't want to waste our money fixing things. We want to try and build on something that had the right vibe and the right look, right? I'll let you keep talking, Cave.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, so the Autumn, initiating that, as she was saying, she's obviously very talented at spotting who works with what people work together well, and and that set that process off it at a very good pace, basically. So we went out with Autumn initially, and then got a really good feel of what she wanted, and then Helene and I just really scoured kind of short lists of houses, and eventually found this amazing main house, which was in East Sussex in the UK, which the owners let us, put wallpapers up and repaint things, and they're very open to us changing things. So we needed to do that very early as well, so that Alex, because she just didn't have hardly any time to make her incredible costumes. So we were kind of under a very tight time limit as well. So yeah, because otherwise the costumes weren't going to be ready for the shoots. So
Yeah,
That
was
was
a
also
challenge.
part of casting. It's a circle, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's like,
Yeah, it was a challenge.
The
Yeah.
location, the schedule, casting. But casting was late. But what we did have the advantage. So while you were driving around the countryside, I knew very clearly from talking to Autumn that we were going to have to make nearly everything. So while you were driving, I was.
yeah.
Well,
Well, I will explain for the people watching. The thing is that I think a lot of people think that I've exaggerated. I'm sure because I love exaggerating everything, emotions included. But but the 19th century, like Cave said, that was how you showed your wealth, was with color. And we've become accustomed to movies that the sort of like style of a Jane Austen film or 19th century story being in this faded, creamy, faded patterns, but that's because they were filming in homes that had, 100-year, however, old, or renting costumes that had faded with time and stuff, and so there's this impression that it was a creamy, delicate, brownish world, but it was a lot of like Easter egg,
No,
a lot of
think
showing off.
but it was there are a lot of original costumes of the period in museums which you can see, but of course they're old. We're making a film set in that time, so when you look at these museum pieces, if you look inside at the places that haven't seen the daylight, the colors and the color combinations are astounding. They're wonderful. It's really vibrant. So that's.
And you
very
told me
exciting.
something really interesting once, that when you have access to museum pieces, you try and
Yeah, you look
in the
inside the seam
seam
allowance and you can see the real color.
where the
And also the thing that is so exciting about this period was that it was the beginning of women's magazines and exchange of information about fashion. So there was quite a kind of fashion frenzy of homemade. Everybody made their own clothes. If you were wealthy like Emma, you had a dressmaker. But it's about the interpretation of the plates, which is very exciting, as was, I guess, the home furnishing Cave. So, it's a very dynamic period. But what I was saying about, while Cave and Autumn were wrecking, we were setting up our workshops. And the advantage then, because of the time frame, was that we had a textiles department and a dye department. So while Cave was kind of into yardages for upholstery, we made most of our fabrics. We dyed and printed to be able to use vintage pieces and match in with them. So we could be spontaneous to a certain
And
point.
we also worked, we told, each character had an arc with their costumes, with their hair. I mean, Emma had like a crazy hair story, like the curls were tight and like doll-like, and she's so uptight, and then by the end it's just all hell's breaking loose, you know, everything's fuzzy. And and that was the same with, you know, each set was helping to tell a story about, since I was trying to remind people that a big part, you know, Jane Austen wrote great comedy and also was great satire on the class system. And so in order to make fun of the class system, I had to clarify the different stages of wealth. And that was a lot of discussion about, you know, about that, and also identifying characters quickly, because it was a lot, very much an ensemble cast in some ways, and then identifying their homes quickly, and with color, and then the seasons, because Emma takes place over a year. So that book that Alex made, which is amazing, you know, it was about this big, and we had it on the floor with like swatches of like, this is what this color, you know, eggplant looks, and silk, this is what it looks like in this wool fabric, this is, and then we're going through the 4 seasons, and Kave and her team, you know, are putting wallpaper samples down, and we start to build this kind of bird's eye view of like a color world on the floor, you know, in these meetings. And what it did is, I think when we do that, I think it really helps everyone have the confidence to see the variations on those colors. Like, oh, there's so many, once you have that like sample to compare and cross over and stuff, then you go, okay, all these different shades of this color can work in here. And my pitch for the film, you know, I did that with my pitch. It was a physical pitch. It was a stacks of cards with pictures, and I spread the whole thing out on the table and talked through my pitch for the film. And we kept using that as a sort of like visual Bible to keep going back to. And you know, because it's not just important the teamwork between the heads of department, it's important that they have the tools to communicate to all their teams, you know, and all the people running around trying to find, you know, this vintage piece, have this made, blah blah blah, you know, that communication can be like the telephone game, where things can just get so far away from the original desire, it comes back as a totally different thing. Sometimes that's magic, and sometimes that's a disaster. So I think the more little visual tools that we have for connecting within the process of prep, you know, then the more freedom and power than everyone that works under them has.
I think it's about, as you said, Autumn, making the very kind of strong foundation of the film we want to make. Because as you said, we have to then communicate to our departments, but also, you know, the last thing I would want it to sound like is that it is this fantastically well-oiled machine. It's not, because we're working at such speed. There is
total chaos. Yeah.
Yeah, but out of the chaos,
I always
providing
say.
you have that clear framework of the visuals, then you are also open to the kind of the moments of fantastic serendipity, where there's, you know, just something happens and you go, yeah, that's really exciting, that works, we can use that. So, but you have to know what your film is to be able to operate at that speed and that freely.
Yeah, and I had spent so many years trying to prove, in my younger years, trying to prove that my weird ideas would work. And you know, it was when I started building teams that could help me communicate that, I started getting more support, and also choosing better producers. You know, I have a great producer that was in LA, that was my boss. I was her PA. She's my mentor, you know, and it was by having her, Jessica Cooper, by having her as and she produces my commercials here, by having her as my production mentor, and someone I could call and ask advice when I had much weaker producers for those, a lot of low budget videos, you know, in the early days, which were pure chaos. You know, by slowly building a team of trust with people, you know, I was learning also how to empower people to sort of pursue these kind of ridiculous ideas that only work when you see them. And by the time I got to Emma, you know, I did have to fight for quite a few things in the script, and luckily Eleanor Catton, the writer, you know, knew how to write visually. So I had to fight for some things that take up time that had no dialogue in it, you know, and that was like the girls walking by in the red capes, you know, and once everyone saw it, they were like, oh, you know, and so, you know, and that was also helped by Alex building these capes that were different, you know, they're sort of matched, but they were sort of different, you know, and, you know, it starts getting the producers excited about how that might look, you know, and Kave and Helene in looking for the locations with me and finding something that knowing what those places would look like, what the trees might look like. Kave knows so much about the landscape and plants in England and how they change in the seasons. So she's walking me through like, okay, when we're filming this, the trees are going to look like this, you know, all that stuff is color, 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 color. And then Joe Wallet, my beautiful producer on Emma, you know, again, was like a part of my heart, like Jessica Cooper is in Los Angeles, because I require that kind of trust and someone who is not afraid of me and can push, but also is trying to picture what I'm saying, because a lot of the story I tell is often in things that on paper kind of sound stupid,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
it.
and yeah, and
That's
that's
really-
why that team is so important.
And having people help you fight for those things, because you're totally right. It is those small little things that you see and understand, like you're referencing the woman with the red capes, that become such an interesting, you know, thread within the movie, you know, but it's hard to see it on the page, you know. So
I mean, like I shot many years ago, I shot Fiona Apple for Extraordinary Machine, and I just had oranges left over because we had, you know, no money for food on those jobs, you know. So there was a bag of oranges and she was wearing this beautiful white dress, and I threw the oranges on the grass behind her. If I had pitched that, be like, I'm gonna shoot, okay guys, record label people, I'm gonna shoot Fiona Apple in a white dress with oranges on the grass, and they'll be like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, so I did learn that to be careful about who I told my visual ideas to, and that it didn't necessarily mean, because they couldn't picture it, it didn't mean, you know, that they were insulting my taste. I had to find ways to sort of ease people into some of these things that, you know, it helped all those challenges earlier in finding ways to communicate to each part of the department in their language.
I have to say one thing, Autumn is a fantastic communicator. Amazing. You know, obviously she chose us for whatever reasons, you know, and I just felt so, you know, a straight line to exactly what she felt and wanted. And Alex obviously did, Alex did as well. And
Yeah.
so it just made it incredibly, easy is not the right word, but straightforward to kind of push forward on her ideas, you know.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. You know, I think it's not fair to expect, listen, just because I've made, it was my first movie, but I made a bunch of things that could sort of show that I love color. But, you know, all professionals are conditioned to remove their own taste to serve a project. Like this is the army like mentality where we're like, just you leave your taste at the door and you get in and you do what the director wants, or, you know, or what the client, commercials, especially me as a director, a lot of times I'm like, okay, I'm just going to leave that there and I'm going to just be of service to this and get the job done and try, you know. So in a way, I have to give permission, you know, I had to give Kave and Alex and their team permission, like by explaining the boundaries. They show me something and I have to say, it's okay to go brighter, it's okay to go bigger, or this is too much. Like I have to start building the boundaries to my vision for this, so that they know, also get comfortable with going beyond it, because they're professionals. So they definitely, I'm sure, I don't want to speak for you, but I'm sure you've done jobs where you're like, I'm just completely pretending to be this person and that I normally am not, and I'm going to just create this vision that is not my taste, you know. Right? I mean, sorry, I don't want to out it.
But all that communication comes back to what you started saying, Autumn, about, you know, communication is the key to how to get the best spend for your money, because it means
Yeah.
that we're not wasting time getting options or versions that don't work. We know what
Yeah.
we're doing, and
And-
you're enabled. And
Mhm.
I think everybody wants to do that. It's disheartening for everybody to work really hard on something and for it not to be used, right down to, you know, the people stitching and embroidering. You know, they spent weeks doing something and they go to the cast and crew and go, but where was it? And you go, well, you know, so it's
I
really
remember
difficult for people.
everything we didn't use
Motivation.
with like
Yeah.
great pain, but we did use almost everything. But
No, we did,
but
and more, and more.
And reused it and made it
Yeah.
something else. That's always
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes there is waste, and so I sort of feel like it's like antibiotics, you know, you like don't take them all the time so that they'll work. And I just like, so the thing is as the crisis of shooting and the schedule and everything gets closer and closer, you kind of need to like save up. Like you can't cry wolf, you know, you got to like, okay, now I don't know what the fuck I want and I need you to help me and give me some choices. Like I that is a special privilege, you know, that you should save. That's my advice, you know. And it's also okay to admit, I think it's powerful to admit that you don't know, you know, exactly what you're doing all the time. You have to make the whole team feel like you are the captain of the ship and that you're not going to just flounder around and leave everyone to drown in their own departments. But it's also powerful, I think, you know, to admit that you're overwhelmed, because sometimes leaving that, you know, I think I probably, both with Alex and with Kave, there was moments where I was like, it's like I was just waiting for the muse to come in, you know. Like, I don't know. And then they would look at me and then I'd be like, I know.
Well, that's always the wonderful thing I've always found in my career, when you are part of a team where, you know, the director, the leader is empowering you to be inspirational, and it's not to do what they are saying, it's to do something better. And in those moments, be able to present something like, you know, and that really makes you feel your self-worth as a member of the team, and with a director that gives you that type of power.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you know,
I
you're,
agree,
yeah,
yeah.
the AD is very important. Deborah Sabin is such an incredible AD. And you know, this is that if you're not like, there's a lot of secrets passed between the director and the AD. Like, oh, what the fuck do I do? I don't know. Like, is she freaking out? Is she crying? I don't, you know, like that trust is like, oh my, if you don't trust your AD, you're so fucked, you know, because you can't, there's so many people and you just can't go directly. I'm very controlling, I hope in a positive way, you know, and I've worked on that over the years to not be controlling for the sake of it, or you know, it's better to be like, yes, my dad said, you know, when you say no, the improv is over. And you know, you should be saying yes, but, you know, and so building on something, you know. But I think that goes for, so it matters to me who the PAs are, because and you know, Maurice Langen, our amazing hair and makeup designer, you know, if her team isn't right, they're the first ones in contact with the actors. I mean, that those people could fuck the whole day up, you know, if they've got a bad vibe, you know, if there's a darkness, like, you know, seeping in, and negativity, you know, there are therapists, are healers, you know, they're helping the actors deal with a lot of their fear and helping them, giving them space to prepare for that day. So the PA that brings them their coffee, you know, this is why we have to protect everyone on set, you know, and especially in these COVID times. But I've always felt like the valuing the life of everyone on set is also the right thing to do, but it is also cost effective.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is also powerful, you know.
I found it to be a career lengthening event. Somebody told me when I first started out as an AD, take care of your PAs because they're going to be your producers tomorrow. And I can't tell you how many
Mhm.
PAs who came through my system, then became line producers or UPMs or just producers who have hired me because they thought I was a great human being who did a great job,
And I've heard that. I've never even met you in person, and I've heard about your reputation. It is a small world in some ways. And I was a PA, and I am so grateful I should have died many times. I mean, being a PA in the 90s was like, oh my God, like nobody cares if you live or die. I think Jessica Cooper, who I'm talking about, was the first producer that I felt like actually cared if I made it through the job, and because of that, I worked double time for her. And, and it's a testament to her too, that she is now my producer on commercials, and that partnership, that value that she gave me, I gave back as much, I hope, and that forged a working friendship that still is thriving. And that's how you learn how to build a team, and a lot of young photographers ask me for advice on networking. I'm like, it's not about networking. If you can't get your friends to trust you when you take their picture, then just start there, like make them feel good about the photo you've taken of them, and then build out from there. Trust is networking, not, that bullshit, like, showing off. Trust is the true, like, heart networking. Like, people look out for you 10 years later. They're like, I remember working with you, and I had a teacher once that told me, I didn't go to college, really. I went to drama school. It's a long road. I mean, the people are like, ask me how, I'm like, oh my God, I studied ballet for 14 years, and then I was like, became a photographer only because I was free. I knew how to do it because my dad took pictures.
Well, this is never, and this is an interesting thing, because we touched on this, about life experiences that lead you into how you are now. I mean, Kave, I'm curious, and you, Alex, as well. I mean, obviously, in your positions now, and this is something we always try to explain to everyone, you didn't start out as a costume designer, you didn't start out as a production designer. So what is it, in your particular journey, because every road is different. There is no roadmap to get from the beginning to where you are now. But in your particular case, and each one of you, life stories, your life experience that helped you most becoming, the profession that you are.
Well, I started, I always wanted to go to art school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I did foundation, and then I actually went and studied fashion at St. Martin's back in the early 80s. And I discovered it, I just loved design, fashion design I sort of fell into. And while I was there, I realized that I wasn't really wanting to work in the fashion business. So I dabbled a bit in friends' film school films and doing costume, funny enough. And then I sort of moved into doing costume as an assistant and on sort of short films and all sorts of different things. And then on that progression, I realized I wanted to try other things as well, because I just love design. I just wanted to see if I could do production design. So after I sort of went back to the drawing board, so to speak, I learned how to draft. I've always been interested in every aspect of design anyway, so I just studied more about architecture, and then I got a job as an art department assistant after working on I did loads of film school films helping out people. And on this particular job, I met this lovely man, Jamie Leonard. He's a designer, production designer. And he asked me to come and work on a job that he was doing. And from then on, kind of just made my way up. Doing loads of pop promos where you just do everything. You used to build the set, paint the set, just do everything. And then I did a few short films. And then eventually, Andrew McDonald, who worked with me I did a film called The Long Day Closes, which I was art director on, Terence Davies film. And I met Andrew McDonald, and he was developing script for Shallow Grave, and then it all came together. They asked me to do it, and that was it. As a designer, that was me.
That was it. You get that, you get that one crack at something, and then you're
there.
But it takes a lifetime.
It's like with Alex, she's a theatre designer. I mean, she's
I trained as an architect.
Designer
we
as well.
We completely, we did the opposite.
That's amazing.
I trained as an architect
Yeah.
and then worked in the theatre designing sets and costumes for years. And
Yeah.
in England, it's very, very hard. I have a lot of children. It's very hard to bring up a family when you're earning so little in the theatre. And the directors I was working with were starting to move into film. And I just kind of went with them. I did a few small productions where I production designed and costume designed. And that I've just found that so unsatisfactory because you just become this kind of delegating machine. You don't get that kind of real payoff moment of really being able to take anything as far as you want it to, or to see it going that far. You're just running departments. And I really loved clothes as storytelling. So I moved to the costume side. Isn't that funny, Cave? I didn't know
It's really
that.
weird because I think
We must have crossed somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what? Your architecture, that makes so much sense with your costumes. They're literally like little buildings. You know, like
Look,
I bet they move better than little buildings.
no, I'm sorry. That's
Lots
meant to be a compliment. Yeah, but
lots of fashion designers were trained architects, you know.
Well, it's a
Interesting.
design process. It makes no difference, you know, it's buildings or clothes. It's
I think it's
design.
the design, and I think, you know, as you're designers, aren't you, ultimately, and you understand form, shape, color.
yeah.
It's kind of comprehensive.
But also, like, you were a punk. That makes a difference.
Yeah, I was a punk.
feel like
Like that.
and my production designers, Adam and Tina here in Los Angeles, that I love. You know,
Yeah.
Adam was a punk. I told Cave when I started working with her, like, maybe I can only work with punk rock production designers. And then when Alex told me the story about seeing David Bowie, I was like, that's it. You know, because what's your, isn't it like, didn't you tell, I don't want to ruin
I snuck out of school and went to the Ziggy Stardust concert, and
Oh my
you know,
God,
it was
did
just a life-changing moment. I could not go,
Oh my gosh.
you know, putting your school uniform on after that concert and trotting back into school was not really.
And I think me coming from rock and roll, now I'm being really like a an indie rock snob, but you know, and then Chris Blauvelt, okay, I'm getting somewhere with this. I really have always loved period films, good and bad. You know, I don't know what it is, you know, and so having that punk rock, that rock and roll background on everybody, Chris Blauvelt, you know, is my DP, who's a genius, does works with Kelly Reichert and did the mid-90s, and so many amazing films, and a Gus Van Sant film, worked with Gus Van Sant, some, you know, and he's part of my LA skate, you know, punk past, not that I was, but he was, and so I felt like us coming in with that like punk background, you know, or the rock and roll background, I felt like it helped because we weren't falling into the traps of like, this is what a period film should be. And also we were sensitive to there's a lot of weird shit in history that is not talked about as much as we all know, and finding out, you know, and people are finding out more. But, you know, I think, you know, the strangeness of history is so fascinating to me, and the strangeness of human behavior in the past, and the you know, the habits and the and things, you know, all of that was included in our dialogue about this, and instead of just sort of jumping into a program of how these movies are made. And I do think that helps. And for anyone that's not sure exactly what they want to do in the industry, I think that wandering is valuable, you know, and I'm giving a speech here from my fireplace, but you know, I've wandered through so many different things, and I think that I brought all of that experience into Emma, and I hope more movies, and I hope I'll keep taking pictures, but you know, but I think that because I studied ballet for 14 years and I failed at that because I was too tall and it wasn't good enough, you know, that was so valuable. That was like that. Emma is sort of choreographed like a ballet. I mean, on purpose, I wanted there was a clockwork theme, or so that when they broke the choreography, then it was another storytelling tool for showing the intensity of emotion, and sort of seeing how each character was trapped, in their worlds and their position in society. And so, I think I've rambled onto a lot of topics here. Well, I'll if there's any questions, I'll
No. But I mean, it is, it is amazing because we all are kind of like, the added events that is our life, like helps us bring experience and style that, define us like into our positions, right? As people, as filmmakers, as all of us are filmmakers. And, that's always the thing we always try and explain to, young and aspiring people is that, it's a meandering path, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, because that's just going to strengthen all of your boundaries, in terms of, what you're seeing and what you're bringing to a project. There's everyone is always so anxious to be like, no, I got to get there now. Like, let the experience show you when you're there.
The thing about being a PA and being supposedly the unimportant one on set is that people say the craziest shit in front of you because they think you're invisible. And I was 6'2" at the time, and they still thought I was invisible and unimportant. And because of that, I witnessed a very powerful male, of course, director, bluffing. And it hadn't occurred to me that men bluffed. It hadn't occurred to me before. And it was one of the most valuable things to have learned as a PA, besides understanding what happens when you ask for some bullshit from someone, like what they have to go through to do it. That's very valuable, and I recommend everyone do the hard lifting themselves, so they to avoid, I mean, I can't avoid being spoiled sometimes, you can't. It's like it happens, and I'll always keep working on it. But the thing is that I didn't know before I saw this director that was directing a commercial faking it and then confessed that he was faking it, didn't know what the fuck he was doing. It just had never occurred to me that you could be in a position of power and not know everything. And that was very encouraging, And I've told this story to a million times to people I know, but the first photography job that I got paid for was just shooting stills on a commercial. And I learned photography from my dad because it was just in the family, I didn't really ever go to school for it. So I didn't really know why I could take pictures. It was just a osmosis or something, and my dad's influence and stuff. But I called him desperate because a client had asked me like what type of camera I was shooting with, and I panicked because I was like beyond a couple of questions. I really didn't know how to answer anything about my gear. I called him and I was like, Dad, they're gonna figure out I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And he's like, you went to acting school, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, act like a fucking photographer. And he hung up on me.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna act like a photographer, and hopefully the muse will come. I won't fuck this up.
That's brilliant advice. Oh my God. One of the things I'm curious about, and with your photography background, and when you're looking at sets or when you're looking at locations, are you active with your camera, and or is it your mind's eye that you're experiencing the event in?
I tend, you can be fooled by photos. So in a way, I'd rather take iPhone photos because it's like you're blatantly not shooting with the right lenses, and I don't really use. The benefit of having been a photographer is that I've been a film photographer. Well before digital, I had to, you have to picture it before you can shoot it, and when you shoot it, no one knows if you did it right until you get the film back. So besides Polaroids, and so that experience is very useful because I know how to not only I understand what my DP, which most of the time is Chris Blauvelt, I understand what the challenges will be based on the existing lighting situation in the house. you know, and so that helps, like, again, like we're advanced in the conversation about what it would mean if we shoot in this room, and whether it only looks good a certain time of day, or whether we have the budget for the lights we would need to be consistent about the time of day and all that stuff. And I can imagine what it would look like dark, I can imagine what it looked like with sunlight pouring in, and that does really help that I have that. And that the other thing is that because I spent years as a photographer having to oversell what I could do, also because I was a woman, and so there was a lot more doubt cast on my abilities. I had to learn how to really explain with authority what I thought I could accomplish here, and also just choose the best time of day to shoot it when there was no budget for lights. So, you know, I guess it's a long-winded answer. Is like
No, it's a legitimate answer. I mean, it's a, you know, it's a background that helps you be able to visualize, you know, because the interesting thing is, I remember, and I've said this story before, and, you know, we've all been there when we were before the digital filmmaking age, right? The DP was a Svengali, right, who had this device, who like taking these measurements, and nobody really knew what it was going to look like, you know, and the film stocks, the way the emulsion, what they would do with the stop, the pushing,
Yeah.
the pulling, you know, so, which is very different than now, because now we all see it on set, right? We all see it there, you know, in the DIT or on the monitor, you know, there's a LUT that comes up, and you can get pretty close to how it's going to be. But, you know, for colors of wardrobe and set design and everything like that, you
It
know,
helps.
we were kind of entrusting a person who was, you know, exposing for it.
Yeah, the costume designer and the production designer can be very much betrayed by the wrong lighting. It does. It's, you know, my dad told me when I was younger, he's like nothing is harder than lighting jewelry, because it looks like a cheap piece of shit unless you light it right. It doesn't look like a diamond. I was like, oh, I'm not interested, you know, and he's like, but it was, I don't want to have to do that. But mad respect to the people that do that, because the translation to what I'm saying is actually that it doesn't matter how much Kave has to spend on a room. If that room is not lit, right? It looks like a cheap piece of shit. It looks like no one spent any money. It looks like a bunch of cardboard pieces. You know, it's just, lighting is the glue, the magic, you know, because, you know, a lot of young photographers who work in natural light first, I think it's a really great advantage that you know, like, this didn't look good at noon and it looked amazing at 4. Like, knowing that is very helpful, you know. And then they have to learn, if they become professional photographers, then they have to learn how to light something so it looks like that. And that is harder, and that's harder when your budget is small. And so when your budget is small, you have to choose a location that is giving you, I don't know how, like, I don't, if you've ever been on a set that was built for a movie, I'm talking not to you guys, but, you know, to people out there, like, there's this little fake town, a Mexican town in LA that's been in I saw it in a Beyonce video. I've seen it, and I can always recognize it because they were nice to me when I was younger. I like somehow worked my way in to get a deal if I didn't take up too much space, you know, to do photo shoots there. And it was built so that they could, so if you walk around it, it looks like a village, but it's built to face the sun to maximize shooting time, right? So, you know, when I'm looking for locations and my budget is small, and even when my budget on Emma, I still want to be able to maximize what the natural light can give us, even though we did have a wonderful budget for lighting, you know, because then you have, it's like a little clock, you know, you're like, where the schedule becomes, you know, we'll use the natural light here, we'll supplement here when it looks like crap, we'll go there, you know, and sometimes even just having an understanding of how beautiful it looks at 4 o'clock in that room just gives you something to copy, you know, like, I want that lighting. And then that let's say she designs a dress that's eggplant, that's a very silk or something that is very different with like cascading light through the windows, or someone just bouncing light off the ceiling. you know, if it's wool or if it's silk, that's different. The way the shine on the fabric, the way the folds show, whether it all goes black, whether you don't see the detail at all, you know, like these are all decisions that I think are important to make, and, you know, and together, you know, and if you don't know that stuff, that's the thing you need to make sure you have, you know, I do have this advanced photography experience, but if you don't know that, you need to really find your other with a DP, which is important anyway, you know, who you trust is like on that and understands that and is like, you feel comfortable with asking questions, and your team feels comfortable talking to the DP about that, because that's going to affect the colors they choose.
Well, it's interesting, and this comes back to the trust in the team aspect, because one thing we were talking about, you know, having done lots of period movies, I know it's always important to be able to shoot and test wardrobe and color palettes and this, that, and the other. But I know because of your schedule and how things went, we discussed this, Alex, you didn't have much time to really get, okay, here's the full wardrobe. So you're definitely throwing things. There was a huge level of trust there, because as you're saying, if an actor was coming for the first time, Autumn, you're seeing it on the day, there had to be this trust that it was going to work, right?
Yeah, because fittings photos are not accurate, you know, and that's also, it's really important to know that as a director, that like, you know, that when they send you a photo from a fluorescent room on an iPhone, like there's no magic in that photo. You know, you have to help the team out in imagining what that means, you know, before you say. I think this is why a lot of things get oversimplified and drained of color, because people get scared by those photos. You know.
Yeah, I have a huge resistance to sharing fitting photos, because they're our work in progress. They're just a very brutal noting system and recording of what the problems are.
Yeah, and the color is not accurate against a white wall. That's not how that color is going to look.
No, and it's not lit, and the actor doesn't have the wig on or the hair, or
and the actor is going like this.
Yeah, it's a very technical process. So
I wish I had the pictures here of what we did, though, because by throwing the fabrics and the wallpaper and the, you know, down on the ground and taking pictures of that, so basically what he's saying is that that often the moment we were about to shoot was the first time I was seeing some of the costumes.
No, but most of them, I mean, we only really camera tested Anya in a couple of the men, because there just wasn't the time.
Now this is because this is the deal, you know, like if I wanted the kind of costumes that we were going to do, which were, you know, like that was the deal. So she could have accomplished a different type of costume making with more advanced, a little bit more advanced, if if the desire was something simpler, but because we were reaching so high in the detail of the clothing, this was what I was agreeing to. And that is where trust comes in. We did such thorough color and fabric and seasonal and character planning. And I just have to keep including Maurice Langen for hair, because that is also like, if the collar is to here, the hair has to, with those curls and all that stuff, it's all, the hair design is part of the costume design.
And the bonnets, there's no point in Maurice doing a fantastic hairdo and then I walk in with the bonnet on the day and go, well, that's not going to work. So again, the communication between Maurice and I was huge. She would come into fittings, she'd have fitting photos, she'd have color swatches, that had to work. And even going into the makeup trailer, we'd get together every morning just to check that we hadn't had to make any changes that were going to.
And what happened with that preparation was that each actor was the final piece in the puzzle, because Kave and her team had it was like this beautiful orchestra of visuals, but that doesn't matter if it didn't work with the costumes that were walking in. If Anya's in this like crazy amazing dress and she sits on this like chair that just doesn't work with it, it's not about things matching at all. It's like, and that's the beauty, that's kind of the magic of it when you start going like, she's out of place here. She makes the whole room sing. She disappears into the grandeur of this room. She's the brightest thing in this room. These are all things that we talk about, and I think that's why I could trust, and again, I'm very detail oriented and very controlling, as I said, and I hope a positive way. You know, there's a point where you have to trust your team to just that they're gonna do it. And that practice comes from my team here. Shirley Carrada, my costume designer, and Adam and Tina, my production designers here. That is training. I've trained myself, and they're my friends too, you know, and learning how to treat your friends is a really, when they're helping you out, you know, in the early days, like we came up together, you have to learn how to treat your friends. And if you learn how to treat your friends when you're working with them right, you'll know how to treat your team right. And to, you know, I could have, with the wrong behavior, pitted Alex Cave and Maurice against each other. And that's very dangerous for a production, you know. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And a lot of it, I mean, you know, the thing is, for those who, you know, as people are learning the process, you know, a lot of it, the building blocks, as you said, you start with Cave, and then, you know, and her design work and her color work, you know, that's going to build the tapestry that actors are going to get to play in front of, you know. So then, you know, it really is a handoff, you know. And that was the interesting thing for, you know, having done, because I've done my fair share of period movies, and that is the thing that struck me in watching Emma, is there is the colors have a contemporary feel to them in the way that they respond, right? That they're alive and vibrant, which is what you guys have talked about, versus what a lot of people have come to know in period movies, where things are drab and somewhat at a loss for color, because, you know, we either, you know, it's very old costumes or replicating old things rather than getting to the research, the source of what those colors really were. I've found it particularly interesting lately, even though it's a strange exercise, but there have been people with AI that have been colorizing like like movies from like the 1900s, you know, where we've only seen things in
war films that have been colored.
They shouldn't be doing that.
no, but it's interesting. I don't know how the AI, but it's interesting to look at it in a world
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
we're never used to seeing any type of moving images from that time frame in color. It's always been black and white, and and as an audience member, you just become used to it. Oh, it was a colorless world, right? For whatever, you know. But then when you start to see historical record of, oh wow, oh my God, look at
well, actually, that's a really interesting subject that I'm fascinated by, because you know, if you were raised shooting black and white film like I was, you start to learn, as those guys really knew, what colors you need to create. You know, when someone's like, oh, can you just turn it black and white later? It's like, yeah, well, you can tell when someone's done that, because, you know, red, like a vampy actress in an old movie with red lipstick, that's not red lipstick. If she was wearing red lipstick, it would look like she was wearing skin color. Like, you know, red turns like a kind of lighter shade of gray, you know. And I would love to have seen, you know, in the sort of early Hollywood days, because they were pretty goth. I think they had to wear kind of more blue lipstick to come up to have that thing that translated as red lipstick. And, you know, the colors would have been chosen purely for how they translated to black and white, not based on fashions of the time. They were like, this, in order for this to look like that shade, you know, this darkness, we have to use this blue color, you know. And if in order to make this seem like she's a frothy pink, you know, fairy or whatever, it has to be this color, and this sparkles more than that, you know. And so that's like, for me, like the translation, you know, when you grow up shooting film, you had to learn that, you had to know that, if you were trying to achieve a certain sort of dramatic effect with, you know, especially in rock and roll, someone, you know, so, but it's really, in color is such an interesting storytelling tool. And in you know, the Jane Austen is very wordy dialogue, but it's so much about what's not said too. And so I was relying on the talent of my actors to give me one layer of storytelling. I was relying on the talent of Kave's team to give me another layer of story. This person is oppressed by their environment. This person adores this environment. You know, they come to life outside, you know, and relying on Alex to do another layer of storytelling. Like, you know, sometimes Anya Taylor-Joy playing Emma, you know, she had these colors that there was one point where I think when she was first pouring tea for Harriet, Alex had designed this collar that when she leaned forward just did this little, you know, that was like a snake dance or something, you know. And a lot of times the costumes that Alex designed were telling us what was really going on, that Emma was behaving very badly, or Emma's vanity, or that Emma was now in love, or, you know, and that really helped, because like Mr. Knightley, for instance, with the collars, you explain better than I can, Alex. I think this is very interesting.
The collars were, it was a sign of class if you could afford clean laundry and if you could have your collars starched. So the aristocratic men had these very high starched collars, and their valet would tie their cravat, which was also starched, and their neck would be right up, and they would literally crack the starch as they lowered their necks into it. So we had on our costume truck, we did a lot of tests, some of which were disastrous as to the level, because we were using real starch as opposed to spray on or quick starch. So we were doing tests as to how far we could go with the starch, and what starch would endure for the day, and what would just have the right amount of break in, I think.
Now if the actors didn't trust Alex, that would be a problem. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, it's fine. I mean, everyone can make their period movies how they want to. It's fine. This isn't a judgment, but because I wanted to humanize the characters and to show them struggling within the rules, I wanted the rules to be pretty hard and fast. Now, that means that all the men had sore ears from their fucking collars.
We did have a little bit of, I think some of the starch got sort of razor sharp. We had a couple of,
you know, and so God bless Johnny Flynn, you know, especially because he was supposed to be, you know, top tier, his character. But without that trust in Alex, we wouldn't have then achieved him losing his mind and just tearing it off. And you know, because he plays a character that was raised to wear this, to be comfortable in it. It's, you know, it's like this quote unquote good breeding, that like it wasn't uncomfortable for him. And so then we could achieve him like losing his mind later and tearing his collar off and just like laying down and being overwhelmed. We earned that by having him be so comfortable in something for a modern man is very uncomfortable. And so he was in pain most of the time, you know,
I think also
his boots and his collars, you know.
Part of the, you know, what talking about the communication, the communication that I gain from the actors in a fitting, because they're working with Autumn, they're working in music rehearsals, dance rehearsals, and they bring all that into the fitting. So there is, you know, it's Chinese whisper is the wrong word. There is a communication line where we can grow ideas together.
Yeah. And help each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also understand, you know, Autumn's talked a lot about trust. There's a huge amount of trust in fittings too.
Yeah.
In terms of, what you learn about people, what they're not telling you, what they do tell you, you know, and all that comes into how you can develop the character that they're going to play by using what they bring. So
yeah, if I don't have a costume designer that my actors or musicians or whatever trust, and that's something that Shirley Carrada is so amazing at here, you know, I'm lost. I've lost by the time they're in front of my camera, you know, like, because it's very private what people like and don't like about themselves. And I think a great costume designer anticipates that, or maybe they're just having a bad day and knows how, you know, the actors in my movie were being very brave in that they really accepted the roles. You know, I'm sure most of the bitching was also filtered by the costume department and the makeup and hair, you know, and they're my therapists, you know, they're the people I've hired to help the actor get to a stronger place before they get on set, you know. And so when I hear about people being by anyone on the crew, actors, you know, and or by the director, or using humiliation as a tactic to get a result, you know, it makes me enraged, because I feel that I'm now veering into another topic, but you know, that humiliation and is a shortcut. That is the easiest way to get emotion out of someone. That is the easiest way to make someone vulnerable. It is the easiest way sometimes to make someone seem sexual. That is a fucking shortcut. And if you can't do your job without humiliating someone, you know, then you're not good enough, in my opinion. And that goes down to the costume designers, to their team, to the makeup and hair, to production designers, to the DP, to the director, to the ADs, to the way they're treating the actors, you know, they have to be led, they have to be told what to do, you know, a lot of times, but it has to be with respect. And you know, and so since I guess I feel it's okay to say this because this is about trust, you know, there isn't one person that deserves respect more than another, you know, and sometimes when someone's behaving badly, it's because there's something else going on. And so I think having a team I can trust to deal with that and communicate the important stuff to me, not just like, oh, she's trouble and all that bullshit, you know, it's like, I think she's having trouble because of this, you know, that is a thing that then, you know, the information that comes through that instead of gossip becomes useful and helpful to help these actors and the people on our team to make it through the day, you know, and do their best job.
You're going to say she or he is having trouble, Autumn.
She or he, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
just,
no,
yeah. No, I actually, just because yeah, it's true. Yeah, sorry,
no,
yeah.
It's true. And I think that also is something that gets overlooked.
Yeah, a lot. And
Yeah.
and every time someone says like, oh, he's difficult or she's difficult, I'm like, okay, you know, it's like, this is like, you mean that person said no, you know, and I think that there are some people who are more sensitive than others, but that's okay if you know how to guide, you know, and you know.
Yeah, experience in this business has always told me you can't trust what other people say about people because you don't know what that experience was or the people around them. It's like it's up to us all individuals, professionals, to have our own experience with people and understand that. It's like, it's so funny. It's like, as everyone was talking about their background as how they came, like I started out as a bartender, and to me,
there you go. That's why you're good.
There is no better people management skill than being in a bar with 200 people who are coming at you for drinks and understanding how to deal.
You know, we need more bartenders to be policemen because, you know, it's so fucked. I just like, you know, the bartender is a great place to begin for all positions of power, I feel.
It just teaches you about, you know, people and like, you know, and you know, it's the age old thing, like, you know, people skills, but it is a way in our business, you know, understanding, you know, what makes people tick. And that's, you know, as you said, it's like, that's just the essence of individuals within the business. It's part of how we put teams together. It's like understanding, it's like everything's a jigsaw puzzle, right? And how are these pieces going to fit together to make a beautiful, lovely picture? You know, that's what all of our process is, I suppose.
Yeah. And, you know, and my talent was questioned most of my career, and you know, and it still happens. Like I think like, oh, God, okay, I did this, now people will trust me, and then I do this other thing and people are like, well, yeah, but can she do that, you know? And so I also I don't know, my brother has a auditory processing disorder, and I think that I had to learn when I was young how to re-explain something in a way. It was just mysterious what went in and what didn't, you know, and how. That didn't mean he was stupid, you know. And so I had to really be careful that the way I talked to him didn't make him feel stupid. That's hard for a brother and sister in general, you know. I mean, that's like, but I'm so grateful to my brother because that experience of, okay, he doesn't get what I'm saying, so I have to say it this way, or he's distracted by my impatience. Like that, for anyone that has like someone in their family with a sort of processing, you know, something like, I don't want to say disorder because it just, you know, it's just not how I process things, you know. It's so helpful to remember how much your attitude can distract someone from hearing you know, and sometimes you do need to be the big bad wolf. Like sometimes people have to be like, but you know, I try to take the Mary Poppins approach. It's kind of like we do not do that in this house, you know, like, so I've definitely terrified some people, but I try to check myself, and I'm not perfect, you know, that it's not based on personal attack. It's not based on, it's not rage. It's, you know, it's like, it's a responsibility being in power. And it will always be a learning experience. And each person and how they process information is a blessing if you're listening, because you're learning another language. Like, you know, oh, this is how I explain this to this person. And now I know that new human language of that a specific person, you know. And I don't get people that are like, I shouldn't have to keep learning.
Yeah.
I don't, why is that an achievement?
No, it's not an achievement. You're absolutely right. Like, well said. I do want to, there's a couple of questions have come in that
Okay.
we didn't address that I do want to ask, because there's a great one here that ties in Kave's process with Alex. So in particular about the house that you guys chose. And the question is, you know, obviously it's a big deal re-wallpapering someone's house and earning the trust of that person to know that, you know, you're not going to fuck their place up. And the question is, did you have to have conversations with Alex about the textures that you were going to put up on the wall to make sure that that went with the idea of what she was proposing in costumes? And then also expanding upon that, how did you choose the particular furniture in the house for Autumn's vision?
Well, I worked with my set decorator, Stella, who brought forward lots of beautiful bits of furniture, fabrics, you know, so when we, you know, we reupholstered various pieces of furniture. So when we, for example, when we walk around the house with Alex's fabric swatches and wallpaper swatches and paint swatches, we kind of set them up against each other. And with, you know, and Alex's assistant said, well, this dress will be worn in this room, and it's going to, you know, these are the color choices that Alex, you know, was thinking. So, and then Autumn would look at them, we'd look at them very carefully, all of them, and try and see what worked where, when. And also we visualized the rooms as well with concepts after the event as well. So
Yeah.
it was a slow process.
It's also a series of trying to trick your, like, refresh your eyes, you know, because you're like, you get used to something. And so sometimes it's good to put the wrong thing in.
Yeah.
You know, like that's, again, trust. Like if you're like, why'd she put that in? You know, then you guys are fucked. Like, you know, you got to be like, oh, okay, that doesn't work because of this. Take it out. Oh, it feels better. Sometimes that's how you kind of decide something by putting the wrong thing in, right? You know?
Yeah, and it wasn't a quick exactly. It was a slow process of this, you know, back forward.
Here,
back,
I found actually one of, I don't know if
yeah.
you can see. So this was like, you know, I can't see wallpaper. Let me see if, you know, this is like a series of fabrics together. Sorry, because it's bleaching out there. That might be, you know, these are the kind of things we were doing. These are, you know,
It was the other thing, we've talked a lot about color. It was also when you were getting to upholstery, Cave, it was also about the scale of pattern, wasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and that was really important because you were buying, you know, fabric in yardage to be able
look
to
at this beautiful book that this is one of the pages in Alex's book that we were pulling, like, you know, pieces of fabric out of these sleeves and throwing them around, and this cage had big paint swatches. Something that I could advise people that love color but like worry about translating it to a bigger team is that I did this one job in Kiev. It was a commercial, and so there was a language barrier, and there was a really specific color story going on, and there was wallpaper and this. So what the production designer did for me was because we often work walking around with paint swatches that are this big and you're trying to fold down things and stuff. So we picked a bunch of colors that they painted about this big, and we had these big pieces of oversized paint swatches. That has been really helpful, and actually painted instead of printed, because most people I hope would know now that when you print a color in your printer, it's not accurate. So by taking the paint and painting like a sort of swatch this big and having a bunch of swatches, it just, even if it wasn't the final color, it really helped to have that texture of paint and fabric and something, you know. And so I would advise that is like a really great way to.
We had very big swatches like that because you can't do it from small ones. And also the other thing that you had to think about, you know, is this room going to be an evening, you know, night light?
Changes candlelight changes everything.
You know, you have to consider all these different things. And we did actually camera test specific things as well. You know, Chris, you know, had the camera lighting conditions with
then
the,
you add filters, lenses. We had some Star Wars filters that were early Star Wars that we're pretty nerded out about. Chris Blauvelt, you know, is like that the DP is like an essential, like each person is another, you know. Once he was on board, we'd started this whole thing. Once he came from doing Kelly's movie, he dove right in with this and helping us go like, yeah, that would translate as this in candlelight, you know, or I could help you with that by, you know, a lot of people talk about Barry Lyndon being lit by candlelight. Well, you know, I mean, it's online, you know, you can see how they did it, but you know, our memory of candlelight is not fading always to complete darkness on the outside of that orb, you know, because our eyes see so much more than the camera can. So what you're trying to do is not necessarily always repeat what real life is. You're trying to repeat what your memory is, and that also is that story is affected by that. If it's a romantic moment, things glow more, you know, and or whatever, you know, or you know, sometimes the darkness becomes comforting and sensual, you know. And so you know, Barry Lyndon, you know, there was a bouncing off of something to give a little bit of texture in the background of those candlelit moments. And so we talk a lot about what type of candlelight feeling we were going to get in each scene, and how important that was to the story. Or all the candles lit, you know, is.
Yeah. I mean, for example, when we're doing the carriage scene, when they leave the Christmas party, it's that fabric is so close to the costume,
Right.
and it's dark as well, and that fabric had a lovely quality, you know. It was slightly satiny. It was actually like Alex's fabrics. It was an original you know, 18th century fabric, 19th century fabric. And so we camera tested that, you know, to see if it was good in a small confined space with the lovely costume, and how that all worked together. So everything was, you know, looked at at many levels, you know, lighting levels, reflective of fabric levels.
And also when you're making, like, you're deciding whether you're trying to romanticize someone or make fun of them, you know. And so like Maurice, you know, or I don't know if it's Maurice or Alex, but you know, like there's a dinner scene where Emma's pissed off and jealous of Jane Fairfax, and she had this little thing in her hair with a bobble, so that when she turned her head, it's kind of, you know, you know, because I think all of us have seen like someone in some fancy outfit, but when they're pissed off or they're acting like a monster, it becomes comical. You know, what made them seem chic and gorgeous like becomes hilarious, you know. And so we talk a lot about, and talk with the actors too, you know, we're making fun of your character in this moment. Your character is glorious in this moment. Your character is suffering, you know, like this clarity is going through all the departments. That's really important.
The other critical thing that Autumn did with me and Alex and Maurice is that we sat down and we page turned the script in very fine detail.
Yeah.
About what happened in the scene, where they were, what were they doing, what was the background to it. It was just done in such enormous detail, you know, that then gave us kind of, you know, advised us how to progress in certain areas or how not to, what we needed to do together. You know, it was nothing was left to chance, in the sense of we really looked at everything very forensically.
That comes
And
from my
that
early
is really
days. That comes from my
Huh?
early days. Like a funny version of that misunderstanding is that when I shot the cover for a Wilco record, called Wilco, um, it was supposed to be a different concept for the cover, but Jeff Tweedy had sent me this picture of the Who on the back of a trolley car with a baby elephant. Like it's just kind of a wild vibe, like it was fun. And so he's like, I'm thinking this vibe for the shoot. I knew he meant like the vibe. Or just there's something about this I love. That's how. But then what I did was I sent it to my production designer, my props guy, who had gone to Milwaukee early because we didn't have much of a budget, so he went to go kind of hunt through the flea markets there, so that was like spend a little more on hotel rooms. This is the kind of thing, like, what are you spending your money on? So spend a little more to get him there earlier to find more inexpensive props and stuff. So I sent him the picture without explaining, and then a day later he called. He's like, okay, I can't find a baby elephant in Milwaukee, but I found you a camel. And I was like, what? I was like, what? And I was like, I didn't even remember there being a baby elephant. And I was like, oh my God. And then I was like, and then I started joking with Jeff Tweedy. I was texting him. I was like, so about the camel, and then it was so funny that I was like, wait, are we really doing the camel? And he's like, does a bear shit in the woods? Yeah, we're doing the camel. And then that became that album cover. But so that was like a good mistake that happened, but it can be really bad sometimes. So I learned to take the time to try to explain what I'm picturing, or at least to say that I don't know, because there've been a lot of hilarious misunderstandings,
No, that's great.
bad
And,
ones.
what I refer to as the page turn with the few key people, like right before you start, is so valuable in the immediate creative team, just really understanding what the director is going for, just sitting there and reviewing the pages. Because oftentimes, how many times is there something that's not written, or it's written and the director's like, no, what I really want to do is this, and it's like, let's find that out early, rather than 3 weeks out from shooting that it's not how it's written on the page.
Well, yeah, because like the AD and the day-to-day producer, like their job is to like make sure this shit happens, right? So if you're not telling them like, don't do, no, not that thing, it's changed now, like, and so and like I said earlier, like as much as I would like to talk to everybody, you run out of time to communicate personally, and so depending on the AD to talk for me in a lot of situations. And if I'm like, don't bother me now, which is definitely a gut instinct, because you're just like, I'm so overwhelmed, so many questions, but if you don't deal with those questions from the AD, like it's the crazy telephone game and you've got a camel instead of an elephant, and you never wanted an elephant, and and everyone's really wasted a lot of time trying to make it happen, so that's yeah.
Oh my God, that's so wonderful. This has been some great, you guys obviously have a wonderful chemistry together, and a couple of people have just chimed in, not even just with questions, just saying how much the set of Emma must have been wonderful with the type of energy that you guys have. So it's just been really great, and we really appreciate you guys coming on board and sharing, your experiences and your thought process with us, and people who love to chime in and listen, because we like to be here for a little bit of a learning tool, and people learn by hearing people who've done it tell the stories about how it gets done. There's no better teaching mechanism than that. So I want to thank you, all three of you, for please joining us here today. And I do want to thank, there's some behind the scenes. The Film Roundtable is several of us. We've got Matthew Wolf, who's an integral part of this as well. We've got Aaron Weil, who helps out all the time, and Maria Prieto. So between the four of us, we try and put these things on and bring filmmaker friends of ours on here just to discuss the process. And
it's really an honor to do this, because I learned so much from hearing stories from people over the years, and I love, to be able to share some of it in all the weird, wild ways things can go wrong, I think are helpful, I hope. So, and right, how they can go right.
It's a great learning tool, and people just love it. People just love to hear the process and the steps that everyone's taken to get here. So thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
Okay.
thanks, Alex and Kave, for making time. I really appreciate your unending support, thank
Aw,
you. Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
Thank you,
okay,
thank
all
you.
right, and thank you. You're such a great moderator.
I
I was
appreciate
really
it.
I was really hoping that you would be our moderator, because I've really enjoyed the conversations. I mean, I've enjoyed all the conversations that I've seen, but I think it's you're the OG moderator on this, so
Well,
I
thank you so
appreciate
much.
it. You
I
made it really fun.
appreciate that. And thank you everyone. I hope to professionally cross paths with some, if not all of you at some point.
Yeah,
All right?
yeah,
Take
yeah.
care everyone, and please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, lovely to see you all.
Love.
Bye.
Bye.